Okay, hey everyone, welcome to my channel. So it's currently NaNoWriMo, the middle of it, basically the end. We're in week three. I hope everyone has been doing really good on their screenplay writing or even novel writing. So I recently read, or I have been reading, Save the Cat for I think the past 3 years or something. I'm a very slow reader and I'll be in and out just for the parts that I need. So chapter five is like one of the best chapters ever. Like, I love this chapter because I've been able to use it for outlining because I've basically finished a number of stories while I was in university. And I was like, okay, here's the real deal. Let's get into it. So now it's just been about restructuring and reorganizing the book that I'm writing. So uh its current name is Freedom. So now it's just like, okay, so I have every single chapter down. I've been working on everything, and now it's like, okay, in this chapter there are two scenes. For me, I like to have two scenes per chapter. And so now what happens in those scenes? So I will be sharing the link to this PDF uh, on my VK. So hopefully it will be linked in the description. Okay, so just for you to do all the exercises and to read the chapters alongside me. So, chapter 5 is on building the perfect beast. So, now you're basically done with everything, but now it's time to edit your work. Okay. So, Blake Snyder goes into detail on his friend Mike. Okay. I don't want to waste anyone's time. So, you can just go read the PDF. It's at page 97, the actual book, but 58 on the PDF. Okay. So, we're working on making our boards. Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. So, the board is perhaps the most vital piece of equipment a screenwriter or novel writer needs to have at his disposal, next to paper, pen, and laptop. And over the years, whenever I've walked into someone's office and seen one on the wall, I have this to smile because I now know what it is and the migraine in progress it denotes. So now, us as writers, we know exactly what we mean. I think sometimes I'm up until 3 a.m. just writing because I feel the energy and I'm just like, okay, let's write. So he goes on to say, boards come in all types and sizes: blackboards smeared with chalk, cork boards with index cards, and push pins to hold the beads in place, and even pages of yellow legal pads scotch taped to hotel walls while on location, in the attempt to rework a script on the fly. The board is universal, and yet, of the screenwriting courses I know of, I've never really heard this useful tool discussed. So damn it, let's talk about it. I saw my first one on Mike Cheetah's office wall at Barney and Enrich 20 years ago. Naive that I was, though I'd already been paid actual money to write a few screenplays, I'd never seen the board, nor could I imagine what it would probably be used for. Didn't you simply sit down and start and let the scenes fall where they may? Didn't you just let her rip? That's what I always did. But thanks to the chairman of the board, Mike Cheetah, I learned not only the vital importance of planning a script by using the board, but how to use it to supercharge my results. So I'm so excited for us to get into that. Since that time, I've employed it often. In my case, I use a big cork board that I can hang on the wall and stare at. I like to get a pack of index cards and a box of push pins and stick up my beats on the board and move them around at will. I have many decks of these index cards, rubber bands, and files by project of scripts written and yet to be, and all I need to do to revisit any of these scripts is take out the pack, deal them up on the board, take a look to know where I left off, and figure out if I need to call Mike. Okay, so something similar to this when I was going through it. Ooh, now I have to go all the way there. YouTube. Oh, wait. Okay, so there's someone called Katie Tastic, and it sort of has the same type of vibe as her. Like when she made her video on outlining. Well, there's probably an ad. What am I doing here? Okay, yes, I watch YouTube on my computer. Anyway, so she talks about how she uses this board and she goes through each act and scenes within those acts or chapters, for novel writers. That's very similar for this case. So, the board is a way for you to see your movie before you start writing or to see your novel. It is a way to easily test different scenes, story areas, ideas, bits of dialogue, story rhythms, and decide whether they work or if they just plain suck. So, 100% want you to just do this for yourself. For me, I basically use a book, like a big book that I have, and I draw like squares for each one. Basically, like it shows here. Okay, so you'll divide the paper into four, and then you'll do act one, act two, act two again, part two, and then act three, and then just start drawing squares for each thing that happens. It's so helpful and quick and easy. And you should definitely get it done before NaNoWriMo. So, though it is not really writing, and though your perfect plan may be totally abandoned in the white heat of actually executing your screenplay, it is on the board where you can work out the kinks of the story before you start. It is your way to visualize a well plotted movie or book, the one tool I know of that can help you build the perfect beast. So when I finished my book, of course, it's a load of like garbage. You're just writing, writing, writing. You planned a bit in the beginning, but I was, I think, 17 when I started writing my stories, and now I'm 23. So I'm able to like take a step back and apply this to it, and I can kill all my darlings, add in things, take things away, and now it really helped, especially with Act 3, because Act 3 was a mess. So here are the most beneficial things about the board. It's tactile and it wastes a lot of time. Sometimes you just want to waste time, have some fun away from your difficulties of writing. So the exercise of working the board uses things other than your fingers and on a keyboard. Pens, index, cards, pushpins. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the first cards first. Once you've bought the size and type of board you feel most comfortable with, put it up on the wall or use a book and have a look. It's blank, isn't it? Now, take 3 long strips of masking tape and make 4 equal rows. So basically like this on your long board. Or if you're more daring, use a magic marker instead. Either way, it should look like this. Okay? So row 1 is act 1. It is pages 1 to 25 of your screenplay. So now I'm going to be talking in terms of a novel. So our novels should be around 300 pages, which are roughly 100,000 words. Okay, so I'm working with that ratio because that's how long my book is. Okay, so act 1 is page 1 to 25, but if we were to use the metric of a novel, it should be page 1 to 75. Okay, so that's how long act 1 can be around. Okay, and then row 2 represents the first half of act 2 up to the midpoint. So roughly page 75 to oh my gosh, my maths, 175. Okay, and then row 3 is the midpoint to the break into act 3. So if you don't know about Blake Schneider's beat sheet, well, you can just take the whole PDF that I will link on my VK website, VK account, sorry. And row 4 is act 3 to the final image, basically. So it looks easy, doesn't it? Well, it is. It's the whole idea. In a couple of rounds using this tool, it will start to feel familiar too. Soon, like a slot car racetrack, the corners and open stretches of this imaginary concourse will become well worn. Okay? So you will quickly find that the ends of each row are the hinges of your story. The break into 2, the midpoint, the break into 3 are where the turns are. So you need to have these turns in your story. Each appears at the end of row 1, 2, and 3. To my mind, it fits my mental map of what a screenplay is perfectly. And if you buy Sid Field's premise that each of the turns spins the story in a new direction, you see exactly where it occurs. So my favorite book is Twilight. This happens in Twilight, where the first half is her being new to the school, and then she sees the family, and then we come to the first turning point. Oh, something is weird about Edward. He's probably a vampire. And then the second turning point is okay. He's a vampire, but now these other vampires want to kill me. And then the third turning point is she's bitten by one of the vampires and she's about to turn into a vampire, and now Edward has to save her. Like, there was just so much happening, and it was just like amazing. I do not like the latter half of Twilight, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so to my okay, now in my hot little hand, I have a crisp, clean, brand new set deck of cards. It's fun to unwrap the cellophane, okay? And you need to have multicolored push pins, and you need to be ready to put up your first card. To waste as much time as possible, I usually neatly write the title of the movie on one such card and stick it up at the very top and take a step back. In a few weeks or months, the board is going to be covered with bits of paper, arrows, color coded, and cryptic messages. For now, it's clean. So, you should have around 40 cards, no more, no less. Okay. And what on your final 40 is very simple. Each card stands for a scene. So, where does the scene take place? It is an interior or an exterior. So, it has to be one or the other. Is it a sequence of scenes, like a chase that covers several locations? If you can see it, write it with the magic marker. So, the example he uses is int for interior. Joe's apartment is the location, and then the time of day. So you should have this in your story. Okay, so we'll use The Secret History as an example. Okay, it's also my favorite book. So we start off with, let's say, Richard Papin has finally arrived on campus, right? And he is in class with the other students right now. So that is an exterior um, tension that we've got. And it's happening in Julian's class, and it's happening during the day, right? The exterior conflict is between Richard and the other five mysterious students that he wants to be a part of. Okay, so each card should also include the basic action of the screen told in simple declarative statements. Mary tells Joe she wants a divorce. More specific information will be noted later, but for now, the average beat or scene needs to look like this. Okay, so we have the statement. You need to get straight to the point so that you understand the basics of your story. And then we have the plus minus. So it is showing, well, we'll get into that. And then you'll have the greater than and less than sign. So in any storytelling venture, the most burning ideas you have for scenes are what must be laid out first. These are scenes you're sure are going to go into your movie. 100%. It's what made you want to write this puppy in the first place. For me, most often these are funny set pieces followed by that great scene where we introduce the hero and maybe the finale. If you have a gut wrenching moment, that's your midpoint, for example, or the all is lost. And so, well, write each idea on a card and stick it up on the board where you think it goes. It may wind up in another place or it may be cut out. But damn it, it feels good to get those scenes off your chest. Yep, that's up there all right. And so this is what you're gonna have. Okay, so now I really like this because it talks about the major turns. Okay, so right now you've written only the most important parts on your 40 cards or 40 pieces of paper or 40 blocks. So the major turns. The next card you really must nail in there are the hinge points of the story. The midpoint, Act 2 break, so breaking into Act 2, the Act 1 break. Yeah, so those are the most important parts. So since you have the advantage of the Blake Snyder beat sheet, which you can get in the PDF in my VK link in the description, you will know how vital these are. And even though you may come at it a whole other way, I always try to figure out the major turns first. So the major turns are the most important part of your story. So you've written everything out, and now you need to just pinpoint, okay, this is my midpoint, this is my major turns, the plot twist and everything. So I start with the midpoint. As discussed in the previous chapter, it's an up or a down. Okay, so I'm not giving you any spoilers, but you have to go through the previous chapter of the Blake Snyder beat sheet first. So either your hero or heroes reach a dizzyingly false victory at page 55 or page 175 for your 300-page novel, or an equally false and dizzying defeat. So they think they're defeated, but there's still hope. Okay, so in most cases, nailing the midpoint will guide you, and it is one decision you must make before you can go on. Most people can nail the break into Act 2 because now we've changed up, we're entering a whole new world. And the setup you've got and the adventure, or at least the beginning of it, is the movie in your head. But where does it go from there? The midpoint will tell you. So I'm trying to think of a good example. So we have Mean Girls. Okay, Katie's new to the school. She's part of the Mean Girls clique, and then she loses all her friends. Like the Mean Girls don't want to be friends with her. With Regina George as well, her own friends. Sorry, the gay and the bike. Don't want to be friends with her. She throws this party, and like her life is just in ruins. But then it's like it all comes together after that. So with the midpoint nailed, oh sorry, the all is lost is not too hard to figure out. It's the flip of the midpoint. What about the up or down of the midpoint can be reversed to create its false opposite. And though it may take you some time to adjust both, give it a try. If you nail these 2 points, the break into Act 3 is usually cake. Now your board is starting to flesh itself out. It should look more like this. So we see in the first row we have the opening set piece, so introducing your characters, and then by the end of Act 1, it's like, okay, we've introduced everyone and we're setting up for the new world that we're about to enter to in Act 2. And then by the end of Act 2, you should have your midpoint. So this is halfway through your story, okay? So you should be halfway through by the time you reach the midpoint. Okay, so this will help limit your words, help you kill all your darlings at this stage. Okay, and then the second part of Act 2 leads up into All is Lost, so the complete reverse of your midpoint. So if your midpoint was just a false defeat, everyone feels miserable. All is Lost is the false hope. Okay, so if we think of a little life, okay, the midpoint might be Jude with his boyfriend, I guess, being beaten up and just oh my gosh, I felt horrible reading that. And then the false hope or the all is lost flip would be him being in a relationship with Willem, but then it's not going to end well. Okay, so we think, oh yay, finally he's in a good, stable relationship. His life has to like go up from here, and it's a false victory. So then we get into break into three. Everything just goes downhill from there, depending on what your midpoint and all this lost was. So you need to cut things out at this stage. Okay, let's move into overloaded acts and black holes. Okay, so with overloaded acts and black holes, for me, the biggest problem is mistaking the cards for something other than beats of the story, something other than acts, actual scenes. This is especially true in early going as I lay out the setup and the action of the first act. I give myself 3 or 4 cards for the first 10 pages. So, in terms of writing a novel, we can just multiply it by 3. So, for the first 30 pages of your novel, okay, that's 3 or 4 scenes to get me to my catalyst. Okay, so a lot of what I'll see spread out there are 7 or 8 cards with things like the hero is a wrongly accused felon, next to the hero is a saxophone player. Well, these are not scenes, this is backstory, and these cards will eventually be folded into one card labeled Meet the Hero. So try and do this for your hero or group of heroes. During an actual scene in which he walks into a room and we see him for the first time. So, as stated in the previous chapter, a lot of this backstory, these character texts and setups, they need to be set up. And all your great ideas will go on cards and just pile up here like BMWs on the 405 at rush hour. Never fear, it will all be pared down eventually. Point is to get it all out. So get as much as you can out during this Preptober before NaNoWriMo comes. This is the first time to try anything. Think of everything and stick it all up there to see what it looks like. So more confusion comes when scene sequences are laid out up on the board Though things like a chase involve many scenes and can range through the indoor and outdoor setups, it's actually only one beat. So it's just one beat. So what usually happens is you have five, six, or even seven cards that are a sequence. Well, these will fold into one eventually, but for now it will look like this. So it's kind of piled up with each other. The fun and games, the chase scene, and the shopping montage, a la um, Legally Blonde, which is an example he loves to use. So one great part about using the board is the easy way you can identify problem spots. So I immediately started to spot problems in black holes when I did this exercise. So I highly recommend using it. When you have a black hole, a place in your script that you can't figure out how to connect one chunk to another, you know it because it's staring you right in the face. All you have to do is look at the board and cry. And believe me, those black holes just sit there and taunt you hour after hour, day after day. What's wrong, Blake? Can't figure it out? Got a little story problem? But at least you know where it is and what has to be done to fill in the blank spots. You've got 9 to 10 cards per row that you need to fill. So this is just all for the beats of your novel, okay? And you have to figure it out. The Eternally Light Act 3. So before I did this exercise, I was stuck with my Act 3 as well. Act 1 was fun, crazy, serious. We're getting introduced to all the crazy characters. Act 2 is like where all the meaty stuff is happening, like all the bad stuff to my characters. Like life is hard and, people get into trouble. But then Act 3 is just like, and everything was solved. They lived happily ever after. When that is not the reality, like, of good stories. Good stories have to, punch through the end as well. Like in Act 3 of The Secret History, my goodness, so much was going on. I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. This is crazy. But it really wrapped certain things up, well, as good as it could, um, considering how, like, we don't really know what happens to all the characters at the end. Julian shocks me, disgusts me at the end, and I'm just like, Henry, Henry. Okay, anyway, let me get off, like, The Secret History's back. Okay, so it's usually two cards, just two cards you probably have in your act three. Your act three is probably so light. Yes, I'm calling you out right now. You better do this activity and look at your act three. There's nothing substantial there. That's what I had the problem with. Okay, so there's one labeled the hero figures out what to do now, and the other labeled the showdown. Ha! Kills me every time I see it. And you always keep putting off fixing this. I am currently in the trenches of Act 3. Like, I am fighting my way out and I'm struggling and I'm just so lazy. But it's like, okay, once you get through this, it's like, okay, I know that my novel will be done and it will be really good. So you have to power through. Eventually, this too will give way and your mind will flood with ideas and Act 3 will be filled up. If not, then go back to Act 1 and look at all your setups and the six things that your hero or your story is trying to fix. Are these paid off in Act 3? So we can take, simple stories. Well, just look at your story. In Act 1, what are some things the hero is trying to figure out? What are some things that the hero wants? What are some things the side characters want, the villains want, and things like that? Answer all those in Act 3. Like, round it all up in Act 3. So now you should have six things that need to be fixed by your hero, your villain, and the side characters. And solve it all piece by piece in Act 3. It'll be really worth it. You'll be so surprised, like, oh yeah, I mentioned this. Let me wrap it up in the end. So you should have at least six things to fix by Act 3. So you should have at least six cards. What about your B story? Whether it's a true love story or the thematic center of this movie, this must be paid off too. So that's something nice. If you have a love story, finish it up. In fact, the more you think about tying up all the loose ends, the C, D, and E story, recurring images, themes, the more you realize all the screenplay bookkeeping that has to be accounted for in Act 3. Where else can it be done? What? You're going to pass out pamphlets at the movie theater? And what about the bad guys? Did you off all the lieutenants on your way to killing the uber villain? You got to do that. Did all the hero detractors get their comeuppance? Has the world been changed by the hero's actions? Soon you will find your Act 3 crowded with cards and ideas to fill up the final scenes. 9 or 10 cards will be required to do this, guaranteed. So that really did help. So I'm going to skip out on the color coding and the stripping it down. Once again, you can find it in the PDF linked below. Um, okay. Oh, this is my favorite part. So this includes the plus minus and the greater than less than sign. Now that you have your 40 cards up on the board and you're pretty sure this is how your story goes, you think you're done, but you're not. Here are two really important things you must put on each card and answer to your satisfaction before you can begin writing a screenplay. So this PDF is really shoddy. It's the only one that I could find. Yeah, I don't really have great access. So we'll make the best with what we have. So one is the symbol plus minus, the other is greater than and less than. These two symbols should be written in a color pen you have not used and put at the bottom of each card, like this. So we do it again. It's an internal scene that we've got, interior scene. It's in a coffee shop and it's happening during the day. So Bob confronts Helen about her secret. So now we've got the plus and the minus. The plus is that Bob starts out hopeful, and in the end, so that's a positive. In the end, we end on a negative. He ends up disappointed. And then the opposing factors are Bob wants to know the secret, and the other opposition is Helen can't tell him. So the plus minus sign represents the emotional change you must execute in each scene. Think of each scene as a mini movie. It must have a beginning, middle, and end. And it must also have something happen to cause the emotional tone to change drastically from plus to minus, or from minus to plus, like the opening image and the final image of your movie in total. So think of your favorite movie. How does it start? How does it end? Okay, so with the Titanic, okay, the greatest story of all. It starts off with everyone excited, getting onto the Titanic, like, wow, this is wonderful. And then it ends like complete 180 tragedy, dark, blue, horrible, nighttime. So that's something that your story has to do to be good. If you can't do that, it won't be a good story. It'll be a boring, flat story. Okay. So I can't tell you how helpful this is in reading out scenes and nailing down the real need for something definite to happen in each one. An example can be at the beginning of a scene, our hero is feeling cocky. He's a lawyer and he's just won a big case. Then his wife enters with news. Now that the case is over, she wants a divorce. Clearly, what started as a plus emotionally for our hero is now a negative emotion. Okay, so now this just goes into detail on the plus minus. Just make sure that you have this on each of your cards. It makes life so much easier, I promise. Okay, so then we move on to the second paragraph. The symbols, greater than, less than, denote conflict. So to understand what the conflict is, I always like to think of a scene like this. As the lights come up, two people walk into a room from opposite doors. They meet in the middle and begin to struggle past each other to reach their end on the other side. They each enter the scene with a goal and they fight their way, and in their way is an obstacle. That's a conflict. And whether it's physical or verbal, or simply a guy who really needs to pee and must wait to go to the bathroom or something, he needs to go to the bathroom or else. That conflict must be foremost on your mind when you conceive each scene. So think of a chapter you have in your story right now. Think of a scene. Every single one of your chapters or scenes needs to have some form of conflict, even if it's a romance. It's a romantic tension between two characters. Okay, so the basic setup of man versus man man versus nature, man versus society that you learned in school, English class, can all be applied here. So I'm thinking, there's actually so many movies where this happens. Like, think of 5 different movies where this happens, like where any form of conflict occurs. And I mean, it's just everywhere. So your story needs to have it too. Otherwise, it's going to take you much longer to get your story done. Like, it's going to be irritating. You'll regret not doing this exercise. Okay. So when each scene opens, you must know what the main conflict is and who is bucking against whom. Each person must have an agenda. What is it? How does it collide with their other characters and entities of their past? So, the symbol conflict on each card must be filled in with who each of the players are and what their conflicts are. What the issue is, who wins in the end. Someone always needs to win in the end. So, if we think of Peter Pan, in the beginning, it's him versus Wendy. He wants to be free. Wendy is a stickler for the rules. And then on Neverland Island, it's Wendy versus the boys, and then Captain Hook comes in, and then there's more conflict. Conflict makes things interesting, even if in our everyday lives. Having conflict keeps the story going. Otherwise, we're just bored. Everything's flat. But you must only have one conflict per scene. Okay, if you have more than one person or more than one issue, you've got a muddy conflict. And it's just going to be really messy. Whether it's a large issue or a small issue, at least have just one conflict per scene. If you have too much going on, ugh, it just becomes horrible. Okay, if you can't find a conflict, you need to figure out at least one. Like, there's at least one conflict in real life too. So the reason having conflict is so important and must be in every scene is, once again, very primal. There's that word again. And think primarily by having conflict in each scene guarantees that you will keep the audience's attention. Why? Well, we like to see people in conflict. Conflict gets our attention. Why is wrestling the longest running drama on TV? It's about as basic an entertainment as you can get. Death. Two people trying to kill each other. Why do most movies have a romance? Again, the conflict is eternally primal and fascinating. Sex. Two people trying to bed each other. And at its core, every scene in your movie must be as basic as this in order to get and keep the viewer's attention. Think of really long and whiny stories that we've heard. It's boring and they're just not getting to the conflict. You get bored and you put those books down. A lot of that does happen with like really old classics where it's just like muddy and people aren't getting to the point. That's an issue that can come up. So if you don't have the players in the greater than versus less than, match up your scenes, uh, match up that your scene presents. You don't have the scene yet. So find the conflict, reassess. Okay, so by the time you're done, you should have 9 cards in row 1, 9 in row 2, 9 in row 3, and 9 in row 4. That's only 36 cards. So I would take those 36 cards as 36 chapters. So each scene could be a chapter if you're writing a novel. Okay. 36 chapters is around about normal for a 100,000 or 100K word book, a 300-page novel. It 100% makes sense. So I'm giving you 4 extra cards for those scenes. I know you can't live without it. Stick these wherever you like. We don't have to be as precise, but 40 is all that you've got or need. If you have more than 40 cards, you've got a problem. You need to start cutting scenes, kill your darlings. If you've got less than that, you're probably underwriting and need to start adding some more conflict or just flesh out what your act 1 is busy doing. You do not get points for having the most perfectly laid out board, and as much fun as it is to play with these cards and fantasize about the ebb and flow of your story, there is a point where you must ask yourself, am I in the board building business or am I a writer? So now this is just to help you procrastinate so that you can get in the zone and nail all your beats out for your story. So that's something I really loved about this book. While we've basically reached the end. Okay, so to summarize, so now you know everything about your movie that you need to start writing your screenplay. If you have held off long enough on your movie idea or novel idea to do the steps that I've suggested, you're ready to write. Fade in and begin. Please get started. When NaNoWriMo comes, you can do it. I'm going to hopefully be done with my story so I can just get through rounds of editing. I'm currently on draft 3, so it's like, let's get this. But I do have another story that I would also like to do before NaNoWriMo, so let's keep pushing. Okay, you should be really excited. But let's just make sure you're set by going over the get ready for your deep sea dive checklist. You've come up, number one, you have come up with a great idea, and I mean, it's a killer. You have a killer title, a killer log line, so basically the blurb at the back that explains what your story is about, and you've tested it on friends and strangers. Every one of them can't wait to see your movie or book idea. Okay, tell a friend about your story. Give a quick summary of it and see what their reaction is. Would they want to read your book? Would they not? Honestly, don't be harsh if they say it's boring. Ask them why and see what you can fix. Number two, you have done your homework on the genre. You figured out what your movie is most like, and you screened every relevant Hollywood film or book over the past 20 years. You know what the filmmakers did or what the authors did and what they did wrong, and most importantly, how your movie or book will be a step forward and be the same thing but different. And you're convinced you've got something new. So, for me, an idea that I have, like a third or fourth book idea, is A Little Life, but from a woman's perspective. Since the whole book is basically male centered, it was written by a woman. It's an amazing book, but there are certain things that I was like, oh, I could do this better. Oh, this book sucks. And obviously, it's not fair to say. So I'm currently like writing, I wouldn't say fan fiction, but it's like a different alternative reality of that book. So fixing the problems, I guess, and it would make the story different, completely different, even though it's based on the same source material. It's kind of like 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight. One started off as a fan fiction and then it branched out into something completely different. Yes, some people might say that James stole from Stephanie Meyer's, but they're two completely different books at this stage, two completely different movies. You wouldn't look at them and say, oh yeah, they're the same in certain aspects, but in art, someone said something once about like real creativity is stealing. I'll put it up on the screen hopefully. But yeah, it's very interesting to think about. So, number three, you have figured out the perfect hero to take this journey. This is the character that offers the most conflict in that situation, has the longest way to go emotionally, and is the most demographically pleasing. You've given your hero a primal goal and a real bad guy who wants to stop him from achieving it. Number four, finally, you've beat out your movie or story using the Blake Snyder beat sheet and have put up all those great scenes on the board, tried many ideas, themes, and storylines, and have whittled it all down to 40 actual scenes, with each scene indicating its emotional change from beginning to end and what conflict is in each one. Okay, guys, so good luck, Godspeed, and write. Okay, take the beat sheet, which again will be linked in the description. Read the book, read the parts of the book that apply to you. And honestly, I'm so excited for NaNoWriMo. I hope all of us can achieve our goals and do our best. You got this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope it really did help. Let me know if you want me to go through like different ideas involving this book. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for watching. Bye.